Hi, and welcome back to another episode of O'Fallon Life on Air, O'Fallon's premier podcast. Might be the only one, but it's the premier one. I'm your host, Tony Machaca, and today we have a great guest, somebody that O'Fallon residents and visitors have seen his work for decades, and for decades he's been behind the scenes as the landscape superintendent. He is O'Fallon's premier gardener, Bob Deardeuff. Bob has agreed to join us here today. Thank you, Bob, for being here. Today we're going to talk about things landscaping around the city and hopefully give our viewers and residents here in O'Fallon some tips that will help them this springtime into summer and how they can make their yard pop and be colorful throughout the neighborhood. So, Bob, again, thank you for being here.
Well, I have to give you a warning before we begin because this is my favorite subject and I could talk all day. So you'll have to reel me back if I get too long-winded on a topic.
And I think if you've been around the city, if you've been to any council meetings or HOA presentations, you've been around for years giving presentations on multiple things, whether it's been the Bradford pear tree, how invasive they are, the issues with those trees, the emerald ash borer, that bug that's killing all the ash trees around the region. So you've been definitely a big asset for everybody, a wealth of knowledge. So tell us about the landscape division. You're in charge of that, part of the Parks Department. Tell us how many people you have working for you and what all you guys do around town.
So we have 7 full-time employees in the landscape division. There's me and a supervisor that leads a crew underneath me. That's Dave James. And then we have 3 horticulture specialists that are versed in taking care of the plants. More specialized than we would expect, like a regular parks person who is setting up ball fields or mowing.
Sure.
And then we have 2 individuals that are assigned to mowing during the mowing season. And one mows the landscape lawns, which are irrigated lawns, for example, the Renaud Center, or here at City Hall or the Justice Center. Where striping and decorating the cake, so to speak, is important. And then another individual, they go out and they run the right-of-way route, where they'll mow roadsides and other city properties, which water towers, maybe lift stations and other things, the wastewater treatment plant, the clean water plant, other city property that is not a park. That's what my crew does.
Yeah. And here we are. We have a vast array of, equipment and personnel that do all these things that keep the city beautiful. And here we are the first week of March. And right now things are starting to bloom. We're hoping to get out of the last month of winter per se without another snowfall or freeze. And so you guys are already starting to work on the Main Street baskets. So if you drive down Main Street, you see the beautiful baskets every year. And every year they're a little bit different as far as type of flower and color around the city. So as you're prepping for this warmer weather, what are some of the things you guys are doing to get ready for spring?
Well, that's great because all of what we do horticulture-wise has to do with timing. So being now it's early March, we've already completed our winter bed cleanup. We'll go through and we'll cut down grass, any shrubbery that needs to get sheared back. Blow the leaves out of beds that may have stuck in the wintertime. So we're kind of like prepping for the beginning of the season. And it's funny you mentioned the greenhouse also, because just 2 weeks ago we planted the first seeds in the greenhouse. The petunia seed is very small, like size of a pinhead. They take a while to develop. So usually a week or so after Valentine's Day, maybe the end of February, is when we start to plant those seeds that need a little more time.
Okay.
If it's a marigold or something like that sprouts in 3 or 4 days and takes 4 weeks to finish, we'll delay planting them so that everything is timed to finish at the same time. And we typically target about April 25th to put that outside.
So a lot of science goes into everything you guys do.
Yeah, there's science in them. Yes.
A little bit of luck.
Yes, particularly.
All right, so you're planting in a greenhouse in March or starting that or February to get that going. Is there for folks at home a certain date or a general idea of when they can start planting flowers? Like I've always Mother's Day or St. Patrick's Day. Is there a certain time that's you would say go for it?
Yeah, April 15th is our frost-free date in our latitude here in O'Fallon. But we've had frosts after April 15th. So I think April 25th probably is a day you can really feel good about it. But of course, you're going to pay attention to the weather forecast. And you can cheat one way or the other and probably be fine. I think more than that, as far as just frost, is also soil temperature. Most people aren't considering that. Some plants, like a vinca flower, is a little more sensitive to cold soil temperature. So you're probably better off just waiting until Mother's Day. Mother's Day is when you can guarantee that there's no more frost. That's a definite.
Right.
But then again, that might be a little longer than you want to wait to get everything planted underway.
Okay. So tax day, April 15th, and you would say flower day, April 25th. So something to look forward to at the end of April.
Yeah, give it a holiday assignment. Yeah, I like that.
All right. For homeowners that are watching and listening to this podcast, when you talk about things that they could do this spring in preparation when it comes to their lawn, weed prevention, fertilizer, what would you suggest?
Oh, that's I'm going to talk a while.
All right, here we go.
So the first thing we do in the spring, which is St. Patrick's Day coming up, you want to get pre-emergent. Pre-emergent is a product that you put on the lawn that will stop crabgrass from germinating. It's the only way to control crabgrass. There are treatments you can make after the crabgrass has sprouted, but they're awfully hard on your lawn.
Okay.
So pre-emergent is the way to go. Now, what this does is you put it out, it's on a fertilizer granule, and it sets up a barrier on the surface. And crabgrass only comes back every year from seed. All the parent plants that are out there now are dead from the wintertime cold. So if you can inhibit the seed from establishing itself with this little barrier you put out, you'll have no crabgrass for the rest of the year. Now, again, timing is important. So I tell people that they need to get the pre-emerge product on hand by St. Patrick's Day, and have it on the ground before tax day. And there's a flowering shrub that blooms yellow. It's called the forsythia. And when you see those yellow blooms, you should be thinking, I better get some pre-emergent down this weekend. And I tell people that when all those yellow flowers have finally hit the ground, that's probably a environmental factor you can use to coincide with what you're doing, a visual thing. So if you're driving home and it's like, those yellow flowers Bob was talking about, I better get that stuff. So that would be a good way to have your timing accurate.
And I'm assuming all the things you're talking, pre-emergent, anything else you talk about is things that any resident can purchase at any kind of home improvement store. Nothing specialized that you guys are putting down that they couldn't put down, correct?
That's exactly right. It's all the same product. Shop for it. You could go to more of a professional line if you wanted to. They will sell to individuals coming in as opposed to the box stores. But it's readily available.
All right. And you mentioned the crabgrass that dies every year, the parent does, and the seed comes from that parent. So the seed lives over winter, but then the parent doesn't. Right?
That's correct. That's how that plant protects itself from the winter cold. And believe it or not, Mother Nature's a little smarter than even that. The parent plant will leave a residue on the soil that will inhibit the sprouting of other plants in that spot to make sure that there's a nice little bare spot in the spring for those new seeds to sprout.
So I'm assuming if you can control crabgrass year 1, year 2 and 3 would be better. You don't control it, you're going to have more seeds out there and more of an issue with crabgrass. Right?
That's right.
Okay.
You will not have a permanent turf, which is what we will call a permanent turf. Every year it'll die in the cold, and you'll never get what would be a sod on.
All right. When it comes to grass in itself, what do you suggest as far as there's fescues and different Kentucky bluegrass? What is the best here for the O'Fallon climate?
Yeah, here in O'Fallon climate, that's an excellent point. The turf-type tall fescues have come a long way in once the first one came out maybe 40 years ago. They're fantastic. Turf-type tall fescue. Now, if you wanted to add a little bit of bluegrass in there with that would probably be smart. We rarely see zoysia lawns anymore because these other cool season, like turf-type tall fescue, are so much better. And it'd be hard pressed in St. Charles County to find Bermuda grass. It's pretty rare. I know where they're at, but there aren't many.
And those are the ones that die every winter, right?
They go dormant every winter.
You'll see a brown lawn.
Yes.
And mixed in with green lawns in the winter. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. For gardens, what do you suggest as far as pulling weeds in beds and adding the fertilizer and compost to the gardens right now this time of year?
Yeah, getting your garden prepped right now is important to eliminate the weeds. Don't pre-emerge your garden.
Okay.
All right. If you're growing vegetables and flowers, don't pre-emerge that. Only pre-emerge your lawn. You're stuck with manually weeding when it comes to gardens and flower beds, which could be rototilling, which you could do possibly now. If you were going to do that, you would want to get some well-rotted compost that's not generating heat. You'll see some of these big piles will steam over the winter time. Manure that's not well rotted is a bad idea because it's full of viable seeds and you will never be able to keep up. So don't put any fresh manure down. Make sure that it's really like 2 or 3 years of rotted before you put that in the garden.
So sidebar here, we're talking about manure.
We're talking about weeds.
We're talking about manure, and you want it to not just be manure, but you want it to be well-rotted manure. So, I mean, the science behind this is extraordinary.
Yeah, and that heat I was talking about where it generates heat from as it decomposes is what kills those weed seeds. So they can't survive that. That heat inside that pile will get high enough to kill the seed.
Okay.
And then you've eliminated that from your potential disaster, garden disaster.
Okay. What about like dividing perennials and all that kind of stuff? Do you want to keep those together with annuals, perennials, and vegetables? Can they be mixed in the same bed? Or do you suggest having separate areas?
I think you'll have water requirements that are different for a perennial versus a tomato plant.
Okay.
Something like that. I would not incorporate perennial plants into a garden, into an annual flower presentation. So let's say, for example, I wouldn't plant a yarrow plant with a petunia plant because they have completely different water requirements. You're going to keep one alive and kill the other one because they're not happy together.
Fair enough. Looking at the yard now, so trees and shrubs, when is a good time to start trimming those things?
Well, the general rule with shrubs is you need to figure out when the bloom is on what type of wood. Now, let me back up a little bit. If the wood is generated on the plant in the fall and the bloom is there as a bud, if you shear them in the spring, you're just cutting off all your flowers.
Okay.
So a general rule of thumb is shear the woody shrubs after they bloom, then you're not compromising anything. So let's just take an azalea plant, for example. Augusta National, the woods are loaded with azaleas during the Masters. Mm-hmm. If they would shear all those right before the tournament, there would not be one flower.
Sure.
Because all those flower buds are generated in the end of the summer before, and then they bloom that spring.
Okay. When we talk about like trees that we see around O'Fallon, Bradfords or oaks, when is a good time to do those?
We have trimmed trees in any month of the year, any month. We even trimmed trees when it was 105 degrees and the phone's ringing at City Hall that we were going to kill those trees. And that crossed my mind. None of them died. Okay. None of them suffered. I was beginning to think that we possibly reducing that leaf canopy on that tree during 105 degrees actually made it survive the stress period better. I don't have proof. That's just a casual observation, right?
Anecdotal evidence.
Didn't do a scientific study. But we have trimmed trees every month of the year, and we actually don't think there's a consequence. When the budget allows or when time allows, go ahead and trim.
And I would assume you would suggest trim as necessary, right? If a branch that's dead potentially could fall and cause more harm to a house or a pedestrian, then get it off there, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that needs immediate attention.
Okay.
But as far as general tree shaping or trying to strengthen a tree by reducing the crown a little bit, I think you could do that at any time of the year and be fine.
Okay. Some things that homeowners can do improvement-wise. We're looking at like automated water systems, irrigation systems, suggest those or not?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We have never put in a flower bed after I was here for a couple years unless we had some way to put irrigation system with it. When I first got here, we had one irrigation system with the city, and now we have 15. So it's been a huge change, and performance of what we do is all related to adequate watering, appropriate watering.
When you say adequate and appropriate, should homeowners be monitoring, hey, we've had rain for 2 days, make sure the sprinkler's off in the morning so it's not overwatering, or do you just let it go because Mother Nature might rain for 3 days?
Yeah, the set it and forget it is not good for a sprinkler system or just general horticulture practice. But a lot of people do because they're not, I mean, look at me, you can't stop. But other homeowners, that's a low priority for them. They want to set something and then figure it's automated and they'll take care of it. And of course, if Mother Nature's bringing on the rain, you need to back off or stop the irrigation until the plant finally needs it again. And plants are different than people. You go out for a walk, you take a water bottle, you go out for a 3-mile, 5K run, and you're drinking your Gatorade to prehydrate and then hydrate when you're finished. Plants didn't evolve that way. Plants evolved to survive between rain events, and to be constantly watering them usually is consequential. And a good example is all the new houses in O'Fallon. The homeowner will have the trees planted at the same time as the lawn and the irrigation system, and they're trying to keep the lawn alive, and they end up killing their trees because trees can't take that much water that it takes to keep a brand new lawn alive. So maybe plant the tree 2 years after you've got your lawn established. But then again, the developer needs to plant a certain number of trees, and you're forced to have a tree.
So when we talk about, like, let's say homeowners that have these questions, duration of watering per day, what would you suggest? So
lawns would be you want to put down maybe an inch of water per week. Now that would be rain plus your irrigation system. Okay. So what you need to know a little bit is how much does your irrigation system deliver? And there's mathematical stuff where you can do some calculations, but in general, let's talk about we usually get a lot of rain around the 4th of July. Mm-hmm. And then by mid-July to early October is when we have our driest part of the summer. Most people don't think like that, but September is our driest month. That's when you can set it and forget your irrigation system, where it's just going to run every night. And typically with rotating sprinkler heads that go back and forth, that's about 20 minutes a night, 15 to 20, and every night. And people will say, oh my gosh, my water bill is outrageous. I must have a leak someplace. And probably not. It's probably just trying to satisfy the need during that time of the year.
All right. Time of day. What do you suggest?
Okay. This is a long one, but I'll try to make it short. On the internet, it will tell you water early in the morning so that the lawn dries off and you don't have disease. Okay. Well, when it's 73 degrees in the morning when you're leaving for work, you're going to have disease. All the conditions are there for the disease. It really doesn't matter when you water. People that I think water inappropriately are the ones that begin the cycle at 8 o'clock. And then the lawn is getting watered.
8 a.m.?
Yeah, okay. 8 in the morning. And then the lawn is still watering by, around 10 o'clock. It's finally when it shuts down. So infection occurs. It needs a pre-moisture period of 12 to 14 hours. So summertime, the dew sets up maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, 1 a.m. You're not going to go out there and check, but let's just pretend, you would let the dog out.
You would, right?
Maybe
you would check at 1 a.m.
Then you let the dog out and your feet get wet. There's already dew. Well, you might as well start watering your lawn.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because the metabolic healing processes, photosynthesis is in the day, respiration's at night. So it's burning sugar and growing at night. If you're going to battle disease, infection, drought stress, any dog wear and tear, kids playing on the lawn, all that growth is going to occur in the dark. If it's dehydrated, it won't be as efficient. You won't have as good of results because the plant needs its Gatorade, right? So I think that if it's already wet at 1 a.m., Well, start watering at 1 a.m. And then by 4 a.m., the entire cycle is completed. Then the sun comes up in the summertime, 5:30, and then you start to get that dry down. And you've closed that 11 to 12-hour window of wetness. That's the problem. Okay. Don't water too late in it.
All right. But overnight's fine? Or
yes.
You would be okay with that?
Yes. Because they all say, infection is the problem. Dehydrated plants don't heal.
All right. Speaking of watering, we're talking about plants in the ground, hanging baskets. But let's talk about homeowner hanging baskets from their deck or from their front porch. Is that just daily, every other day, depending on the heat? How would you manage that?
You become a slave to your hanging baskets. Is really what it amounts to. So if you got containers on the patio or on the front porch, you are constantly watering them. And then as the summer progresses, the plants get larger, the temperatures get hotter, and you're stuck watering them twice a day.
Okay.
So one way to fight this is a bigger pot. And it's hard to imagine how big the baskets are on Main Street, but they're gigantic. Mm-hmm. So you'll have a small pot tends to create this yo-yo of wet, dry, where it goes up and down, as opposed to a bigger soil mass, which you've softened that fluctuation. But if you can buy one of those battery-powered timers and put it on a water faucet and run some drip lines over and set it for like a 10 in the morning and a 3 in the afternoon or 4 in the afternoon, all of a sudden you're not a slave anymore. And you have taken that yo-yo and streamlined it into more of a level delivery of water. And you can even go on vacation and not have your neighbor water them. So it is the answer.
All right. I want to come back to baskets in a second, real fast. How about gardens? You have in-ground tilled up yards for gardens, and you have the raised beds. Build a little, wood 10 by 2, framework and fill it with garden soil. What are your thoughts on that as far as, is that an efficient way to do it? Does it cause more work with watering because it's not in the actual ground? Or does it matter?
The one-word answer is drainage. If you don't have adequate drainage, then you're not going to be successful. So to dig a hole in your red clay lawn and fill it with organic material, compost, topsoil,
sure,
or whatever, it's not going to drain. It's like putting all of that in a bathtub, but you didn't pull the plug out of the bottom. So a raised bed gives a chance for that picture a sponge full of water that you just picked up out of the sink. A certain amount of water is going to drain out of that sponge. Well, that's what's happening with the raised bed. It's finding its way out.
And that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Okay.
So you'll have better results in your garden.
Okay, so raised beds would be more preferable in our O'Fallon area dirt.
Yes, our red sticky dirt that you can't get it off the shovel. That's not conducive to good tomatoes.
Okay, fair enough. I'm glad we segued to that. All right, back to the baskets. We talked earlier about Main Street. If you come north of Pittman, right, the Main Street baskets go all the way to St. Joe or to St. Joseph now, or
they go up to Assumption's parking lot, more or less front door of the church.
Okay, and you guys have managed those for how long?
All 21 years that I've been here.
All right. I know this is a podcast. It's made for radio. We know we're videotaping this. How big are those baskets?
The basket itself is 24 inches in diameter, and the depth is about 15 inches.
Okay.
So there's quite a bit of soil volume in that basket.
And historically, you've had 2 baskets per light pole on Main Street.
Right.
Now, the Main Street renovations, phase 1 was south of the train tracks, and north will be renovated in the coming years. But the new side, the south side of the tracks, has a basket that wraps around the pole. How did you guys come to that new design, and why?
Well, so we needed a change, and our baskets have been hung for 20 years. They're old and tired and beat up, the physical metal parts of them. And here's a new concept. Let's take these stackable trays that give you a much better display up the length of the pole, as opposed to hanging on a chain. So with the new renovations of Main Street, that was on my mind 2 years before we broke ground on the Main Street project. So I was excited to have a new look, and it was great. I was apprehensive about, like I said, the yo-yo watering. So I wasn't sure what I was going to get into until we got probably past the 4th of July last summer, and I thought, this is going to work. And they were phenomenal. We were very happy. And we're committed now to go with the rest of Main Street to have this new display.
Do they work any more efficiently, or are they just a different design?
Yeah, the engineering in them is wonderful as far as the horticulture part of it goes, because the tray above drips into the tray below. Each tray has a water reservoir, more or less, where they'll retain water. It gets a little complicated, but they're great. I hadn't told anybody this, but I had a guy from Australia who emailed me wanting to know what we did and how we did it. And that happens occasionally, especially with our other displays we have around. Other cities will call and they'll look for whatever they can get from me. But we bought these baskets, these blue trays from a supplier in China. And this person in Australia contacted them, and they connected me to him, and we shared ideas by email. We had to wait overnight to get each other's reply, but it was fun.
Well, if you're up at 1 a.m. checking the dew on your lawn,
checking the dew.
Check the email. Yeah, and I was going to bring this up, and people probably don't know this. Residents and people that drive down Main Street, those baskets, they came in blue. Those containers were blue. That's the only way they manufacture them. And you guys painted them last year to be black, to match the poles and everything else. So you guys definitely go above and beyond. I think that's a great thing what you guys do. And how often are you guys watering the Main Street baskets?
Well, that's where we got lucky.
Okay.
Because our watering is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we don't come in on the weekend to water. They make it. Sometimes we'll water Friday afternoon to give ourselves a little bit more to Monday morning, and then Monday morning we're right out there right away. And there were a couple times when Monday morning they were wilted. As you know, like I said, they get larger,
sure,
and the water demand is higher. But the canary in the coal mine that last year was that little sweet potato we had in there. That'll be the first one to wilt. So, hey, sweet potatoes wilted. Let's get out there right away with the water truck, and they're fine. Right. So it worked.
Speaking of the water truck, how did that come about? Because if you go down any morning or afternoon, Monday, Wednesday, or Friday in the summer, you don't see your staff on ladders and buckets pouring water in. It's an automated truck. How did you guys come up with that? Well,
after a couple of years here, I saw the need for something like that, and it really had originated from a safety issue. Plus, it was manpower. We would, as a safety concern, we didn't want the driver getting in and out on that traffic side, so another person would go along, and there were two people doing the job that one person could handle if we created this watering arm that fits on the front of the truck. So that's a completely in-house project. Thank God for YouTube. You can figure out how to do things. So I welded that in the shop over a couple years. Each part I solved led me to the next part to be solved. The electric part, it's a garage door opener, which makes it extend out. It's a cylinder for a gator dump bed that makes it lean over. The water pump that runs off 12 volts. All that stuff had to be coordinated and then make it work.
How many other cities around here have called you to figure out how you can build one for them?
One. And they made a better one.
Oh, no. And you haven't remade already?
haven't seen the need, but they don't even get out of the truck to stand it up. We have to get out and stand it up so that we can get underway. But these guys in Washington, Missouri built one. And, they've been welding since they're 8 years old and as farm boys. And they came up with a better one.
That's had to keep you up at night knowing that somebody outdid.
No, I was happy for them.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. And I do know in the heat of summer, and that period after 4th of July in September, you're talking about it's so dry, you guys have filled a pickup truck with barrels of water and taken that out with pumps, right? To various spots to make sure things are getting watered.
Yeah, last summer was really tough because it stopped raining. And when we got closer into late September and October, we were doing what I would call crisis watering. How are we going to move the volume of water that we need to move? We have a 400-gallon truck and a 300-gallon tank on a trailer, but those were out. And we just said, we're gonna put the roll-around trash carts in the back of a truck and fill them. And then we were using little 1-inch pumps to water things we'd never dreamt we'd be watering.
When it comes to rain, you manage mowing grass, as you said, at city facilities and right-of-ways, and also watering flower. So you have a double-edged sword here on the love or hate for rain, I assume. Some of your crews are probably, I need to get out here and mow, but it's been pouring down rain for 3 days. And then on the other side, rain's your best friend sometimes.
Yeah, rain is our best friend. We'll go mow in the rain.
Okay.
They all have their rain suits, and we got a schedule to keep, so just go mow. And they might not get as much mowed in one day because it's pretty irritating. But we still go mow in the rain as long as we're not ruining anything. But from a horticulture point of view, which is what I view everything, irrigation water will keep a plant alive, but it grows when it rains. Got to have rain.
Okay. Speaking of mowing in the rain, is there something should residents mow when the yard's wet? Outside of causing turf tracks and things like that, is there an issue with the grass being mowed while it's wet?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We're on a schedule. We've got it coordinated to where we have to maintain this pace. So we ignore that as long as we're not tearing things up and making mud and causing issue.
You're not going to kill your grass by mowing it while it's wet.
No.
Is there any more wear and tear on the blades of a lawnmower? Yes.
No, but you should keep them sharp.
Okay.
Especially, for example, when you go get your pre-emergent, you should figure out how you're going to sharpen your blades at that same time and change the oil in your mower and get the air filter clean.
All right.
That would all be spring. And then sometime around...
the holiday is St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, right.
They would put it to a holiday.
Yeah, right, holiday. And then Father's Day or 4th of July, you should consider, sharpen that lawnmower blade again, because if the blade's not making a clean cut and it's shredding the leaves, you're causing more stress on that grass. Just when we talked about we're entering into the most stressful time. So instead of shredding it, you want a clean cut on it.
And is the shred where you get that brown layer on top? So a clean cut will help mitigate that?
Yeah. Most people aren't thinking about their lawnmower blade. They may not sharpen it ever. But we sharpen our blades every day.
Every single day?
Every day. And then my guys hate it.
But you make them do it.
We're going to do it.
That's why we don't have brown top grass. All right. So getting into, we talk about spring. Let's talk about the summer, what homeowners can look for, what they can do during the summertime when it comes to watering. If we hit everything as far as watering, what about fertilizing in the summer?
Let's talk about bugs.
Okay.
Summertime brings bugs. Japanese beetle and bagworms, they'll show up around. Father's Day is when you should start having an eye out for them. If you're growing roses, they love to eat the pollen in the center of the rose. And they may not feed on the rose plant unless all the pollen's finally gone. But Japanese beetles have their favorite plants, and Father's Day is when you should start being aware. And then a bagworm is a small caterpillar larva that feeds on evergreens in particular. You should look for those around Father's Day also. And you want to get them when they're only an eighth to a quarter inch long, because by the time they're an inch and a half long, they've done most of their feeding and their dirty work. So to get them while they're small is an advantage to your horticulture practice.
All right. Oak trees, I've seen the big knots around branches. That's a bug, right? That the trees kind of calcified itself around to protect itself. Is that what that is?
That's right.
What do we do about that? Anything?
You can't do anything about it.
Okay.
And that's the dilemma, because all of these old 80 to 100-year-old pin oak trees, and especially north of Highway 70 here, just majestic trees are all succumbing to this problem. We just cut one down in Westoff Park in January before our last big snow we had. Just wasn't going to survive. And we have at least 10 more that are eventually going to fall victim to that. It's called a horned gall.
That's a little bug, bee kind of?
It's complicated. It's a wasp. The wasp will actually deposit an egg. And then what you see is the gall is the tree reacting to that. All this biochemical stuff that's going on between the insect parasite and tree, the host. It's a way the tree is trying to isolate. But at the same time, it forms this nice protective house for this tender larva to survive in.
Gotcha. What other kind of bugs anything else?
Well, those are the big ones. I mean, you can't do anything about the horn gall, but the Japanese beetle and the bagworms are the most common things.
We see a lot of residents put the bags around trees for the beetles.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Buy 4 and give them to your neighbors.
Okay, so in that bag is a pheromone, right?
Yes.
That's what attracts them to go into the bag. Once they go in the bag, they can't get out. But what you're actually doing, correct me if I'm wrong, is you're attracting the beetles from outside your yard, and they're going to get on your tree before they get into the bag. So what you're saying is
give them to your neighbor.
Have your neighbors, and they'll pull your beetles out of your yard into their neighbor.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Because if you ever watch a Japanese beetle fly, it's probably not anybody's favorite pastime, but they're erratic and they crash into all kinds of things. I doubt if they ever get to where they really want to go. They probably hit something and it's like, okay, this is good enough. I'll just stay here. And that swarming period when they come out of the ground lasts for so long, and then they're content. They found a food source and they're going to sit there. That's when you should probably go after them.
Okay. Cicadas, is that?
We never had a problem with all the cicadas and all the 17-year, 13-year, and 2 at once.
Right.
We've never had a problem.
Okay. What about fertilizing in the summer?
Don't fertilize. Lawn fertilizing in the summertime is a mistake.
Okay.
So back to the holiday schedule, you put your pre-emerge, usually comes with a fertilizer by tax day. Memorial Day is the next day to put a lawn fertilizer out. And if you can find a lawn fertilizer that has a slow release nitrogen source, it's called, a lot of times on the bag, it'll say water insoluble nitrogen. The higher that percentage, the better off you'll be. And I equate this to the release of the nitrogen needs to coincide with the consumption that the lawn is going to use it. Otherwise, it's like trying to get a drink out of the bathtub faucet. You can't swallow it that fast. So you're going to lose some of it. It's going to go down the drain. So if you can delay the release of the nitrogen, then more of it's going to be used by the lawn. Less is going to volatilize up into the air, and less, if there's any runoff, it'll be less.
Yeah. For the listeners and viewers at home, I wish you could see that everybody that's in the studio right now, your metaphors, all these anecdotes and stories, if everybody in here are laughing. So you definitely have a great way of describing all this. All right, so we're looking at what can do in the spring and in the fall, and you've been doing this now for the city for 22 years. We're beginning of March right now, and on March 27th, that Friday, at the end of the month, the last Friday of this month, is your retirement date.
Right.
So first off, congratulations.
Thanks.
You've done a phenomenal job around the city with beautification and maintenance. So the city's definitely going to lose a wealth of knowledge and dedication, what the city looks like. And they owe a lot to you for where we've come over these last 22 years. Any anecdotes in the last 22 years? Anything you'd like to throw out there? Remember, this is a PG podcast, so...
No anecdotes. We've done this over and over, and I've had consistency with my staff, and I think they can handle this. They have the routine down, and timing's everything. And we even just to keep the program going, not to say when I'm gone it needs to keep going. The new person, whoever comes in, is going to have ideas and probably elevate the program to something even better. But it's as simple as a Outlook and doing a meeting invite. Mm-hmm. But right before the 4th of July, we want to spray the locust trees at Ozzy for mites. That's already in there, and that pops up. And Tom knows, June 20th, he's going to head to Ozzy and spray the locust trees because we know from history that it's been a problem on those trees.
What is your most proud accomplishment in landscaping in the last 22 years? One project that you're just like, this is what I'm going to hang my hat on as my legacy.
So yeah, I am particular, and this is bad because I was resentful that I had this project thrown in my lap. But the landscaping around the swimming pool at Alligators Creek turned out great. And part of my timing on things, it needs to be at its peak. The landscape needs to be at its peak when that park is most in use.
Sure.
So everything I selected for that landscape around the pool blooms from early June through mid-August or even into late August, so that when the swimming pool is open, it's nothing but flowers. And I remember when I came up with the concept, I told Cindy Springer, who was the director at the time, I said, when you're in the pool, I want you to feel like you're in an envelope of flowers. I want them to go all the way around the entire pool. And it was a lot. And it's a lot to take care of, but it's fantastic. And my wife and I will go to jamming concerts, and we'll walk down the hill past all of it. And, of course, nobody knows who I am. Mm-hmm. And I'll stop and say, this is so pretty. How do they make this so pretty? And they're like, yeah, it's really nice. And my wife, she shakes her head and keeps on walking.
A little self-promotion that nobody knows about.
Pat myself on the back.
And we're talking about the pool, Alligators Creek Aquatic Center in Civic Park, which is where jamming is. So if you have this summer, starting in June, I think it is, that the concerts will happen and the pool will open in May. So yeah, definitely check out the flowers around the pool. And our listeners and viewers will know who to credit for that.
Thanks.
No, you've done a great job. And I know before we started the podcast, you had joked about they're going to be kind of gotcha questions and things. And I actually made one up, and I want to kind of rehash that now. I said, 2 years ago on Main Street, the baskets didn't look that great. They're kind of started to brown. Like, tell us what you did wrong. And you actually had a story. So tell us what that story is.
I surprised you. So we were reluctant to put geraniums in the baskets because geraniums don't typically like the hot part of the summer. But we did some trials at our greenhouse and found one that really performed fairly well over the course of the summertime. So I decided to go ahead and put that on Main Street, which is a bold decision, right? So we got to about early May, and the edges of the geranium leaves were all brown and crispy, and it's like, I started to get in a panic. I sent some samples off to our technical guy that helps us, and he goes, you got a magnesium deficiency. So immediately I'm finding a high magnesium fertilizer. And I thought, what am I going to do if this doesn't work? So luckily I had some other pink petunias that like to sprawl and spread over everything. I said, we're just going to put them in the top, and if the geraniums fail, this is my fallback. Well, as it turned out, the geraniums recovered, and they were great. But the petunias blew also, and they absolutely smothered over the tops. The geraniums created a skeleton to hold them up. These great big, huge pink snow cones of flowers. It was the best display we ever had. All
out of an almost mistake.
Oh, because I panicked.
Well, hopefully your replacement to the landscape division can panic in the same manner you do. That creates even more greatness. So anything before we end today that you would like to get out there to homeowners, residents, any visitors when it comes to landscaping and tips? Anything we didn't cover?
It's hard for me to imagine. Like I said, this is my favorite subject, but I think we really hit all the marks. Don't fertilize your lawn in the hot summertime. If you're going to fertilize, you can only afford to fertilize it one time. It's mid-October.
Okay.
It has to do with soil temperatures again. So temperatures and timing.
All right. Sounds good. Well, again, Bob, first off, thank you for being here. I think it's been a wealth of knowledge. I know I've laughed probably more at this interview than most on the podcast. I know for sure the staff here has. Everybody's filming. So thank you for that. And also thank you for your years of service to the city. And congratulations on your retirement.
Thanks.
And whatever you go to do after this, I hope it's your own private garden beds and flowers and golfing and greenery. So
I'm going to try to reassemble my broken dreams. To get my Elmer's Dream Glue out and try to put it back together.
Fair enough. All right. So as we end here, I want to thank again Bob for being here and all his years of service. As you drive around O'Fallon throughout the spring and summer at the parks, any city facility, and you see things blooming, you'll now know who to thank and what crew to thank when you see them out there. So be sure to click like and subscribe on however you're watching, whether it's Spotify, YouTube, or Apple. And so that way you can know when the next podcast drops and be notified. Until then, thank you, O'Fallon. Yeah, how'd it feel?
Fine with me.